globally in many years. Thousands of years we've been curious to discover, but more importantly, we've been curious to survive. And so we've always sought knowledge from the dawn of mankind, really to address our daily needs, but more importantly, to ensure that we survive as a species. And so research has and must be at the core of what we do and our lived experiences every day. And therefore, for me, really, this festival is an opportunity to open up the space and bring in everybody to really understand that this is so critical for our development that we can't take it for granted. I went to ChatGPT and I was looking at how much was invested in research last year, and the NRF got approximately 6.1 billion shillings. And I asked myself, when we look at our national budget, should the NRF be getting 6.1 billion shillings only? And I'm asking the question to the audience, 6.1 billion shillings only? What can we do with that kind of money if we are going to invest in key pillars that support research? We have so many foundational challenges around, connectivity, infrastructure, skills, and we are talking about accelerating progress and, of course, taking the country to the next level. So our actions must speak louder. And Honorable Felix Kosgei made that point very clear, especially when he went off script. He communicated very effectively and talked about some of these issues. But just to say, it is a fact that data analytics and emerging technologies are the catalyst for a new era of policy making. The collaboration to move the research products into action is much more important, especially in this day and age. And so as we look at Dr. Charles Ibeneme from Africa CDC, if you look at it from the perspective of numbers and figures, which is what cholera, we just acknowledge. And we have a large community of entrepreneurs, but primarily citizen agency is really critical. We must include the voices of impact investments in research especially in this particular era. Shiko, and the rest of you, please enjoy this session. We have an amazing set of panelists, and I look forward to learning from them and all of you seated here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I think he's set pace for the panel. Now I want to invite the rest of my panelists. I will start with Tonya Nyekea, who is a Special Projects and Strategic Initiative Advisor for Results for Africa Institute. I will allow her to come and introduce herself when she sits in the panel. The next one is Mr. Ben Roberts, who is the chair of Young Scientists Kenya, and he said, I say that he's in between jobs. The next one is Dr. Anthony Luvanda. He's a senior lecturer and director of research at the National Defense University, so he's an army man or affiliated to the army people. And finally, we have Dr. Danielle Guariso, who is a research associate at one of my favorite organizations, the Allen Institute, Turing Institute. So for the young scientist, I have a question for you, and you'll get a gift, I think. Who is Alan Turing? If you have the answer for that. Don't Google. Okay, you need to do your homework on that one. All right, thank you so much to my panel for coming this afternoon, I think it's afternoon. So we're going to have like a really rapid conversation around the use of data, imagology, and research. And I'm loving, hello, you can, oh, perfect. Where technology has ceased from being an elitist tool to an everyday tool. But for this technology to actually happen, somebody needs to be doing the work, yeah? So there is a lot of debate around the use of data and data analytics and emerging technology in research. And in the process of preparing for this panel, I realized that we are also eliminating researching on data analytics and emerging technology in themselves, because they can be part of the process, but they can also be used as a research tool. So to start with, I just want my panelists to just starting with Danielle, introduce yourself, and you can inform everybody about who Alan Turing is and what you did at the Institute. And down the panel, just introduce yourself, what you do, and what most excites you about the emerging technology and use of analytics. Okay, maybe I should start with myself because I just actually didn't introduce myself. So my name is Shiko, and Shiko Gitao. I work for a small company called Kala. We do a lot of things, but we do R&D, which is research and development from an industrial point of view, not academic point of view. One of my favorite projects that we worked on from a research point of view is during COVID. And it was very interesting when Honorable Koskei was talking about running away from the city, because it's our team that informed that decision. We took data, mobility data from telcos, from all matatus, from social media. We got a partnership with Facebook and Twitter to find out how big is Nairobi, and plug this data into a model that mapped out for us how often does somebody come to Nairobi and what's the farthest place that somebody comes to Nairobi on a 7-day active basis, not 30 days, not 90 days. So somebody who actually has a productive piece of work that they're doing in Nairobi, and you're able to map out what is now known as the Nairobi metropolitan space using just data. And that's the power of data. It helped us basically get Kenya protected from COVID spread. That is my favorite one. And I want to, just going down the panel, you say what you do and what uses of data in your work.
Hello everyone. So my name is Daniele Guarizo and I'm a senior research associate. At the Alan Turing Institute, that is the National Institute for Data Science and Artificial Intelligence in the UK, I'm mostly engaged in projects that leverage AI and novel data sources to support decision makers in the formulation of policy priorities. So we exploit novel sources of fiscal data that are open and data on development outcomes to understand how governments can achieve the sustainable development goals.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. My name is Dr. Anthony Luvanda from the National Defense University, where I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Information Technology for Defense Systems, and I also double up as the research director. As for what really excites me about data and the emerging technologies that revolve around it, I would love to say it is a lot to do with AI and the fact that it cuts across a number of disciplines, especially when you're dealing with uncertainty, when you're dealing with clustering, for example, when you're dealing with probabilistic approaches to uncertainty. It really plays a role in that. And I will just give 3 examples of research that I've been involved in, just to show you how it cuts across. First of all, we've been able to use Bayesian networks, for example, to be able to predict cybersecurity incidents that might occur within mobile banking transactions and be able to go further and look at what are some of the mitigations that can be put in place and what are the effects of those mitigations. When you have data-intensive research like that, then AI comes into play. The second one was about deep learning and how we can be able to use deep learning to identify microplastics within open seawaters that flow into the river, flow into the ocean. There are issues of fish within the oceans that has been found to have microplastics in them. So we are looking at how does this microplastic actually end up into the ocean. And again, AI, with the aid of deep learning, was able to provide that for us. Within the health sector, again, we've been able to look at how you can be able to use machine learning and use demographic features of pregnant women to be able to come up or to be able to predict whether they can be able to suffer from preeclampsia, which is a condition that affects in the third trimester of pregnancy. So for me, you can see
event. Maybe I'll just, because you asked about Alan Turing, I'll just say what is my connection to Alan Turing. So there's a place in the UK called Bletchley Park where Alan Turing did some of his most effective work, I would say, in helping shorten the Second World War through applying science. And that's that place is about 2 minutes walk from where I grew up, so it's from my family home. That took place in my village, yes. So I'm very proud of that for Bletchley, so not a place I've mentioned very often. I've spent last 20 odd years building infrastructure in Africa, data fiber cabling, data centers, and enabling services on the top. But I think what is exciting me about data from that perspective is that we have done the heavy lifting, right? As Kenya, we have done really quite a lot of heavy lifting as industry, as government together, shifting policies, investing in expensive things, subsea cables, renewable energy, power distribution, data centers, and we have really a lot of capacity of data centers coming online. And we probably have more capacity of data centers and fiber connecting data centers than we have data to fill it right now. But so there's an opportunity. So let's use the infrastructure that we've invested in so heavily and make it, with what researchers are doing, make it effective and make it actually deliver the economic value and get the government to return on investment that it's made.
Awesome. Thank you. Tanya?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tanya Nyakea. I work with Results for Africa Institute. I am a strategy, partnerships, ecosystem engagement specialist. I've had the pleasure and opportunity to work with both the government at a national level, county level, and also private sector. And all that I've done is we have leveraged research, science, technology, and innovation to bring about transformational change and also societal impact. What excites me about data and emerging technologies is that before, when you work, for example, with the government, it was the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics that would translate what you needed to know. There was this book that you used to buy, shillings, and it's basically structured data of the Kenya and the Africa that we want to see and believe in at a relatively cheap cost, courtesy of some of the work, that infrastructure that my neighbor did here. So that's what excites me, and there's a lot more in store.
Thank you. Davis Adieno. I'm Senior Director of Programs at the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data. I support all programmatic work in Africa, Latin America, and the Caribbean as part of this global network. Really happy to be here, and whatever excites me really about data is the practical solutions that we get every day. And I think the most exciting project I've been involved in a couple of years back, some of you may be or might have seen on TV, the levels of Lake Baringo rose quite significantly, and some giraffes were trapped on an island in one of the small islands. The only challenge is there were pythons on that island. And so whenever the giraffes gave birth, the pythons would basically target their little ones. And the food was also fast running out because it was very tiny. And so we were part of the team that used satellite imagery to identify new locations where these giraffes could actually be migrated to. And so the use of new emerging technologies and complementary sources of data really excites me. And it's what I thrive, live, and sleep about. Thank you.
Awesome. My next question will start with you, and then Anthony, and then Danielle, is what needs to be done to use data analytics and AI especially, and other emerging tech in research, especially in an African context? So for the professors and the researchers and the young scientists that are here, what are the incentives? And we talked in our sidebar, we talked about incentives towards research, which are not great in Africa. How do we do that? Davis, it was Davis, the new.
Should I start?
Yes.
No, I would say, I think we live in a fairly difficult environment. Technology really offers us an opportunity to understand these trends. By looking at the time series value of data and thinking critically about predictive analytics, which is now made possible by artificial intelligence and a lot of the deep learning research that's being conducted across the world. And Kenya is also at the forefront of leading on some of these technologies. I think the only challenge is that a lot of them are produced here, but consumed somewhere else. It's a conversation we need to have. We are not the consumers of the products that are being developed through research and technology. I was very young. They were literally experts in everything. There was somebody who could just shape a tree trunk into something really incredible. There are some young people who could a tin of metal and transform it into a sulfuric level. And I think this was alluded to by Honorable Koskei, when his need is for the young people to start early. It is actually possible. Uruguay is actually doing it. Data for Development Festival. And so we'll have the entire world respond to some of the issues that are being...
Which revolves around data. But for me, I look at it in the sense that we need to have a holistic approach. Academia, for example, the mindset of academia needs to change. The curriculum, something needs to be done about it. Policies need to be put in place. For example, can we have data-intensive aspects of research being inculcated into the curriculum? That is one thing. We need to change the mindset of the academia, probably through some sort of civil education or that is required for them to be able to see that this is how the world is going and these are some of the tools that they need to be using for research. But then again, those tools need to be available. Do we have the infrastructure in place that enables that to happen? How do we ensure that they're able to access that particular infrastructure? How sure are we that they're able to access secondary data that is out there? If I want to access data that already exists from the, just mentioned Kenya Bureau of Statistics, how easily can I be able to access that data without having to travel all the way to Nairobi? So those are some of the things we need to look at. Then there's a policy, direct incentives with regards to policy. And that has come from both institutional level and government level as well. Those are some of the things I believe can be put into place.
Love it.
Well, I guess that I will reiterate some of the points that have already emerged. So investment in critical infrastructures, computing resources to collect, store, and pre-process the data is key. the digitalization of data that is already collected and make it open and accessible for both researchers and the public. But I think that it's also important to stress a sustained effort from governments in investing in building, because I'm also excited about artificial intelligence, okay, but it's not the ultimate solution. And to understand any problems that we have in society, it's just an additional tool, but we need to learn how to use that tool. And so investing in skills since primary schools. I mean, if I think about, the curriculum in my country, in high school, we don't have any compulsory, let's say, programming module. Fair enough. But we still study Latin, okay? The language of ancient Romans. I mean,
and my panelists have actually pointed out on the 4 pillars around compute, skill set, how do you use the technology, and talent being a key anchor on that. But there's one thing that we inferred to that everybody has spoken about, the policy environment. And I know this is Ben's favorite topic because I've been speaking to him for many years. So what policies exist, both from research in the health space, use of AI models to research in the health space? It's very exciting. Some of the results are super amazing. If it's scaled, it's going to change the health trajectory in Africa. But on the other hand, are we creating a problem for ourselves? As Daniel has mentioned, do we understand fully? Should we protect our data and lock ourselves in? Or should we just be? So that
partner with academia on joint research. That's political credit as results. But with industry, if they want for their return on investment, they want product, and then you do your research. It doesn't work like that. There may be a policy gap that's caused this, but the main policy is probably at a Pan-African level. I really think it needs policy enabling environment in place. Thank you.
Interaction benefiting. Also, be part of the discussion on shaping policy. Oftentimes, we'll find that when we do research with international collaborators, for example, you'll always be told about GDPR or whatever laws they're practicing. How is it that we arrive at that universal policy that allows those in the nascent markets to also have a seat at the table? For example, the other thing is experimentation should be allowed for. So we need to have regulatory frameworks that allow for sandboxes to exist. How do we have tax incentives to promote research to happen on this side? A lot of the research that is done, you will have African scientists and researchers contributing to conferences or entities outside. So then as Africans, accessing African data, African research is accessed at a cost. So that's the other thing that we want to have is a balance also in the cost implications, that we do not have a barrier to accessing research or data. In my previous work experience, it's exciting to see the like of Riara University being here. We were doing some work on education in primary schools, trying to prove as to whether devices just being introduced into school tomorrow works. What are some of the things that you need to consider from the teacher point of view, the school point of view in terms of infrastructure, and then also the different logistics or components that went to having a device in the hands of students. So this also then speaks to, for an equal playing ground or ecosystem engagement, is that level of capacity building in forms of training programs and then also curriculum design and review.
Awesome.
Can I give a short story, a sad story maybe as a testament to this thing, the point Tanya's made about the accessibility and cost of data, right? So one of my mentees, I won't go into detail of what he's done, but he's, with AI, he's done some initial research, doctorate research around some diagnosis from X-rays, diagnosis of certain conditions from X-rays. And he was trying to scale up the models, trying to do this and look for particular ways to diagnose this with data from African countries. In the end, he ended up finding that every hospital he would go to or the government, either they wouldn't give you data or the cost was so high. He's ended up buying X-rays from India in order to do the research. So he's not doing this with X-rays of African patients. He's doing it with Indian patients because the data wasn't there. And this is problematic, right? We got to be realistic in the way we structure partnerships where people are researching data, the outcome that might be products that might be profitable. We have to get the right structures in place. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot has been covered. And an element that I probably see missing is a lot of peer-to-peer learning and exchanges. Globally, from the work we've done, we've seen that there's been really amazing tools, including algorithms that have been developed in places like Colombia, Paraguay. A couple of years back, we were working with the government of Ghana to track illegal mining using satellite imagery. And a lot of that work was inspired by just connecting partners across the world and just having people talk to each other because often the assumption is you're the only one going through a particular challenge or you're aware that somebody else is going through that challenge, but you really don't know how they're devising the solutions to tackle that particular challenge. And so, one element I would like to really encourage is the idea of cross-border knowledge. I think we tend to focus more on data, and we get lost in the politics of data sovereignty. But what ideally we should be sharing across borders is knowledge, which then inspires partnerships, encourages trade, encourages people to interact and to share in a way that is progressive and quite meaningful. And I think it's a lot easier, to share knowledge than it is to share data. Let's start there. Although, I'm a strong proponent of sharing data across borders, but within the confines of a very progressive regulatory and policy framework. So that's one element that I thought would be really important to address. I think the second one is in the realm of policy, issues around policy, really creating the pipelines, and many of us in this room that can bring the cuts together. If you say you want to hard cuts, it's very difficult.
In emerging markets to solving
the understanding how climate change can impact the agricultural sector. I think it's a major challenge because it's not something that a country alone can tackle, but that requires a greater coordination. And that is the big challenge.
Thank you. I think I'll go back to where I started. AI, for example, is cross-cutting. Therefore, for us to have serious impact, go back to what Davis was saying, policy. Who informs policy? Unfortunately, our policy is not data-driven. It's not evidence-based simply because it does not rely on research. So for me, if I were to look at how we can be able to harness data and emerging technologies, it will be within the policy environment. And basically to inform policy and also to look at the policies that already exist and whether they can be able to solve issues that we predict. For example, it will have been so easy for us to simply analyze what is happening on social media, to understand the thinking and the trends within the young people in this country, and probably wouldn't be where we are at the moment with the Gen Z issue. Again, it's about research, it's about policy and the policies that we're implementing, and whether it is research-based and whether it is relying on data and analysis of data to be able to achieve that. Look at something like, for example, predicting risks. If we're to predict a financial crisis, for example, AI can enable us to do that. It can even enable us to look at the policies in place and whether they can be able to sustain whatever financial crisis that we are predicting. But are we doing that? So for me, it revolves around the use of data and data analytics and these emerging technologies to be able to formulate policy, to be able to implement policy, and to be able to predict the future and relate it to policy.
Awesome. I love that you actually work for the National Defense University. Like, you are in there. Hopefully, you will get listened to. Ben?
Yeah, the thing I'm most bullish about is the talent of the young people we have coming into the space. I think they will work it out. The talent is strong. And it's not just the talent, it's the numbers. There's 1 million young people coming into the workplace, tech-savvy young people coming into the world of industry every year. And that's numbers times talent. Something will happen. So I'm bullish that something is going to come good from these types of technologies. We have to enable them with all the things we've talked about, compute, but the basic mathematics as well, and being strong in these things. You know, we have to enable them to do that, to help that. But I'm bullish that results will come. But you know, in terms of picking something where the results, it's looking difficult at the moment because we're seeing, you know, the current buzz of AI being the large language model, but we're also seeing that, you know, maybe this thing costs so much to make. We wonder, people are wondering whether you can realize that return on investment. So the real, the winning applications is at the end of the day going to be things that deliver good return for the less money, right? If you have to spend billions of dollars on it and it delivers a small return, that won't be so useful. But if you spend $100 million and there's $1 billion return, it's, you know, that's the one. So, you know, we have to, it will emerge, but it's going to be driven by, ultimately, it's going to be an investment game, right? So where it's looking like the financial, you know, where ideas come and ideas get nurtured and they get developed, but the ones that are going to get funding to grow at scale are going to be the ones that look like they are going to give investors money back. Otherwise, no one's going to invest in it.
Makes sense. Thank you. So our talent. Tanya?
What I'm bullish or excited about is that research will stop happening in ivory towers, and we will cease to have data silos. This allows for collaborative engagement. So, for example, when we were doing the Laptop Per Child initiative, how did we arrive at the number of 1.28 million devices? We don't do cradle-to-grave identity. You have X number of birth records. You don't look at how many children were immunized or how many children went through early childhood education to arrive at that number. So what you're doing is you're saying that youth is a percentage of the population, and then from that population, what percentage would be 6 years old? We're now moving to data-driven decision-making and policy-making. So when you're asking for budget or allocation of resources, you're actually able to say why we need this. The story of KEMSA sending malaria medicine to Marsabit ceases to be. The story of buying drugs and the drugs expire on the shelves or at the port ceases to be, because decisions are made, they're intentional, they have data driving why they reach that. As we talk about budget and reducing expenditure, you're able now to do precision budgeting. We move from wild ass-guess methods in many things to predictive or prescriptive analytics. We've got the power of visualization, so data that would have been abstract before to decision makers is tangible, it's practicable, they can make informed decisions. And the other thing that also it presents opportunity for is monitoring and evaluation. It's been a pain point in a lot of the research that's done. You will have investor money come as a project is put out, but it fails or it's not sustained because we were not able to measure impact or change policy. So for example, with the Millennium Development Goals, which country in Africa, for example, achieved the MDGs? If we were to do monitoring and evaluation, we would only be able to do it 6 years after the MDGs last. So